The wind cut through the narrow streets of London like a razor, carrying with it the sharp scent of coal smoke and damp stone. Thomas Hadley tightened the collar of his coat, his knuckles white against the coarse wool. At 17, he looked younger than his age, and the brass buttons on his father's old military jacket did little to hide the trembling that had nothing to do with the cold. He had spent weeks watching men march past their town hall, their boots clanging against the cobblestones, their voices raising in a chorus of pride and nationalism. It called to him in a way nothing else ever had, the promise of purpose, of adventure, of escape. His mother stood behind him, wringing her hands, eyes brimming with worry. "Tommy, you don't know what you're asking," she whispered, her voice catching. It's not like in the newspapers. You'll see things. You'll see things you can't forget." Thomas turned, meeting her gaze with a resolute stare. "I have to, Mum. I can't stay here, in this house, under his." He glanced at his father's picture on the mantel, the stern man frozen in sepia tones, shadow forever. "I need to do something that matters." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. There was nothing she could say that would stop him now. The recruitment office was bustling, filled with a mix of eager boys and weary older men, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the metallic tang of ink from freshly stamped forms. Thomas stepped forward, feeling a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. The sergeant at the desk barely glanced at him before barking. "Name and age." "Thomas Hadley, 17, he said, though the words felt like a lie. He had shaved and stretched the truth about his age. 17.5 was a detail no one would check in the tide of willing recruits. 17, eh? The sergeant's eyes flicked over him, sharp and assessing. "There's a hope you're ready, boy. They won't coddle you out there." Thomas nodded. Ready. Yes, he was ready. By the end of the day, the papers were signed, the uniform pressed, and a small leather satchel slung over his shoulder. London, with its smoky skies and cobbled streets, faded behind him as he boarded the train that would take him to the training camps, to the unknown, to the war. His heart thudded with a mixture of excitement and dread, and as the city disappeared behind the rolling fog, he pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rhythm of a life about to be swallowed by something far greater than himself. Weeks of training followed, a blur of drills, shouted commands, and the relentless pounding of boots on earth. Thomas learned to stand rigidly, to march in perfect lines, to aim a rifle with unwavering precision. Nights were colder than he could have imagined, the thin blankets doing little to chase away the chill that seeped into his bones. Yet through it all, he held on to the letters he wrote home, short, carefully worded dispatches to his younger sister Lily and his mother, letters he hoped would comfort them even as the war promised to change him forever. Then came the orders. The day he would leave the training grounds and step onto the soil of France. The men gathered at the station, a sea of khaki and mud-streaked boots, faces pale, eyes wide with both hope and terror. Thomas clutched his satchel, feeling the weight of everything he had left behind, of everything he had yet to see. As the train lurched forward, cutting through the misty fields of England, he looked out the window at the rolling hills, the tiny villages, the winding rivers. How many of these scenes would he see again? How many would be forever lost to him? He couldn't know. He only knew the rhythm of the train, the vibration beneath his feet, the murmur of voices all around, and the relentless pull of destiny that waited for him in France. The train rattled across the French countryside, smoke curling from the engine like a dark omen in the early morning light. Thomas pressed his forehead to the cold glass, watching fields stretch endlessly, dotted with farmhouses and wind-bent trees. The countryside was calm, almost beautiful, and it made the thought of what awaited him all the more surreal. When the train finally screeched to a halt, A strange mixture. A young corporal, with a patch of mud streaking his face, clapped Thomas on the shoulder. "Fresh meat, eh? Welcome to hell, kid." He smirked, but his eyes betrayed fatigue and fear. "Follow me. You'll need to keep your head down if you want to make it through the night." The road to the front lines was a blur of destruction. Forests were stripped bare, fields torn apart by artillery shells, and the distant rumble of gunfire a constant, ominous drum. Thomas tried to steady his breathing, forcing himself to take it all in without letting panic take over. Around him, seasoned soldiers muttered, cursed, or stared blankly ahead, as if the world had narrowed to the mud beneath their boots and the terror in their hearts. When they reached the trenches, Thomas felt the full weight of war for the first time. The trench was a narrow, twisting wound in the earth, walls lined with sandbags, and puddles of muddy water that swallowed boots and ankle-deep mud alike. Rat droppings floated in stagnant pools, and the smell of decay and human sweat was overwhelming. Men huddled over small fires, cleaning rifles, writing letters, or staring into the void. A grizzled man with a thick mustache leaned close to Thomas, lighting a cigarette. "Name's Harris," he said, voice rough. "You a Boy Scout or a soldier?" Thomas swallowed. Thomas Hadley, sir. I'm a soldier." Harris gave a low whistle, shaking his head. "You're green, lad." "Don't worry, you won't be alone for long." He nodded toward the trench, where soldiers moved with mechanical precision. "Soon, you'll either be like us or not at all." The first night in the trench brought no sleep. Shellfire exploded in the distance, the earth shaking beneath Thomas's feet, and the cries of men, some in pain, some in fear, some lost, echoed across the battlefield. He huddled against the cold, clutching a blanket that smelled faintly of tobacco and blood. He wrote in his notebook, words trembling on the page. "Dear Lily, I'm afraid. I never thought it would be like this." Morning brought inspection and orders. Thomas and the others were assigned to a stretch of the front, near a barbed wire maze that crisscrossed a barren no-man's land. Their objective: hold the line at all costs. Fear knotted his stomach, but he tried to stand tall as Harris leaned close. "Keep your wits, Hadley. Out there, it's the ones who think fast and move faster who survive." Hours stretched into days. Thomas learned the rhythm of trench life, dodging artillery shells, crawling through mud to carry supplies, and learning the language of death whispered in the trenches. A boy from Nottingham became his first friend, sharing stories of home to keep sanity alive amidst the endless horror. Yet the letters to Lily became his lifeline, a fragile tether to a world untouched by blood and gunfire. The first attack came suddenly, without warning. Whistles screamed, men shouted, rifles cracked. Thomas's heart pounded as he clutched his rifle, eyes wide. Harris shouted, "Down! Get down!" Shrapnel tore through the air, embedding in the earth, sending mud and bone flying. Thomas dove, pressed to the wall of the trench, shaking uncontrollably, stomach churning. Through the chaos he glimpsed Harris, firing relentlessly, shouting orders, guiding terrified young men. Thomas realized then what survival meant. Not courage alone, but the instinct to act, to cling to the smallest hope amid relentless terror. When the bombardment ended, the trench was silent, save for groans and the distant murmur of men who had survived. Thomas emerged slowly, boots heavy with mud, eyes haunted. He scribbled in his notebook again. I thought I was ready. I was wrong. This is not bravery. This is survival. But I will survive.